Right, well, I'm going to talk to you tonight about this man, Henry Baker, who led the Leeds Police Fire Brigade from 1871 up until the closing months of the 19th century, and also about the work of the Police Fire Brigade itself during a period which witnessed a huge increase in the risk of fire caused by the effects of population growth, urbanisation, and industrialisation. To give you an idea of the fire brigade's increased workload during this period, annual call-outs went from 71 in 1867 to 333 in 1899. And the annual value of property at risk of destruction from reported fires increased from 111,000 in 1870 to over 1 million in each year of the final decade of the 19th century. Baker said in 1892 that the main reason for this was due to the steady development of the various industries of the borough, which undoubtedly involves a greater risk in respect of fire. The fire at the perambulator of mail cart manufacturers Simpson Fawcett in 1899 is a good example of what Baker was talking about. The Yorkshire Evening Post described this fire as fueled by highly inflammable goods in the finishing workshop, which were in favour of the spread of fire, and once ablaze and crackling like matchwood caused thousands of pounds worth of damage. So, who was Henry Baker? He came from Dover, where he was born in 1841. And fortunately for historians, he left behind what is today one of the treasures of the Leeds Local and Family History Library collection. It was a series of scrapbooks which mainly contain newspaper clippings of the reports of the fires he attended. Baker is recorded in the Leeds Register of Constables as joining the force on 23rd of October 1868. The register provides a description of him. He had grey eyes, light brown hair, and a fair complexion. Before joining the police, he'd worked as a shipwright in the northeast, serving an apprenticeship where he learnt to work with wood and iron. And these were skills that were easily transferable to maintaining fire engines and all the other paraphernalia used by the fire brigade. Reputedly, he could pull apart and reconstruct steam fire engines, and it was said he could make his own equipment, including fire escapes, tenders, hose carts, and ladders. Baker found that the fire brigade he was appointed to lead in 1871 was in a state of flux, as it had been since 1866, which was the year that the reforming Chief Constable James Wetherell was appointed. And he was tasked with establishing what was required to make the brigade thoroughly efficient, but with the proviso that whatever he recommended, there was likely to be little money available to pay for. Despite this caveat, Wetherell still managed to introduce some key changes, such as the appointment of 15 specially designated constables to operate as firemen who were all to be housed near to the fire station so as to be able to respond quickly to alarm calls. And he also recognized the importance of good leadership, somebody with bold command and dash, which of course is where Baker comes in. Now, this picture here I'm sure everybody recognises where this is, just by the side of the town hall. Shows the brigade with one of the old manual fire engines. Now, one of the pressing challenges that Baker faced was coping with the presence of two other rival fire brigades in town. And these were run by the insurance companies, the Sun and the Liverpool, London and Globe. And this rivalry was often far from friendly. In 1868, a correspondent to the Leeds Mercury claimed the brigades looked out for themselves, which was to the detriment of the common cause of extinguishing fire. Matters came to a head in 1873 when Baker was actually prosecuted for assaulting a member of the Sun Brigade en route to a fire. This was a Mr. Schofield, and it was an incident that seems to have arisen out of the practice of the insurance companies of awarding a bonus to the first brigade to get to the fire. Now, this could and often did result in the rival brigades hindering each other's progress. Now, witnesses in this case claim that Baker struck Mr. Schofield with his whip and that he used bad language. Fortunately for Baker, the professional stipendiary magistrate, Mr. Bruce, thought that it was not unreasonable to use bad language in a stressful work situation. And I think that Baker was lucky to be acquitted. However, the stipendiary was scathing in his criticism of the town's fire brigade, and his comments provide a really good contemporary insight into the problem. He spoke of jealousies amongst the firemen, pointlessly knocking their heads against each other, of constant squabbles and rivalry over 20 years and possibly longer. And he described it as an evil and intolerable nuisance when he made clear his view that such divided authority should not exist in a town like Leeds. Well, it was the reluctance of Leeds Town Council to spend sufficient money on firefighting, which was one of the reasons why the insurers had retained their own fire brigades. And the very fact that Leeds had a police brigade rather than an independent one like Birmingham and Manchester was symbolic of this, because it was the cheaper option. But in May 1876, Leeds Mercury reported a change of attitude. The council indicated that it was now more fully prepared to protect property from fire, and the town acquired its first steam engine, or steam fire engine, I should just clarify. Yorkshire Post and Leeds Intelligencer pointed out a key advantage, which was that firemen would no longer have their attentions divided between the fire they were attempting to put out on the one hand and ensuring the availability of around 40 volunteers required to operate the hand pumps on the old manual engines. And two more steamers followed in 1881 and 1887. Another considerable improvement was the decision taken in 1880 to build a new fire station at Park Street, one that was, as the Chief Constable, Mr. Knockbauer, put it, more suitable to the requirements of a brigade of so important a town. This fire station was to be equipped with all the necessary conveniences for maintaining the brigade in a state of the highest possible efficiency. And soon after it opened, 3 years later, in 1883, a visitor to the new station described the experience as a treat, and he observed neatness and order was much in evidence. Now, this picture is taken. Obviously it was called Park Street, but the site now is taken up by the Leeds Crown Court, and the top of this street is the George Pub on Great George Street. So that should help you get your bearings. Now, of course, you can have all the equipment and facilities in the world, but without a decent supply of water, putting out fires becomes much more challenging. And this is something that Leeds struggled with. In theory, plugs or hydrants were attached to the underground water mains at specific points into which firemen could connect their hoses. But it wasn't until the Public Health Act of 1875 that these became mandatory. But even then, the presence of plugs was no guarantee that they actually worked. Because if they were attached to old, unsuitable pipes, then the flow of water would be affected. And an example of this was at the fire at Parker Brothers Flax Mill in May 1866, where the nearest plug was found to be stopped up, and the mill burnt down in just 20 minutes. And nearly 20 years later, there were still problems. Leeds Times reported a fire at the oil warehouse of R. Humble & Co. And despite 11 plugs being in use, a mere driblet of water was obtained from what was a 3-inch corroded main. And the great irony was that nearby, there had fairly recently been installed a new 12-inch main, but it had no plugs fitted. Leeds Times correspondent, the Owl, highlighted the nonsensical position of a town with a fire brigade that appeared to be efficient in every respect. But what was the point, said the Owl, without an adequate supply of water? The Owl concluded, it is evident that in many parts of the borough, the water supply is thoroughly defective and larger mains are required. The Leeds Mercury said that the poor supply of water was the one grave deficiency in an otherwise highly trained and admirably equipped corps. And the situation was no better in some of the outlying areas. Baker used the opportunity of a fatal stack fire at Beeston as late as 1892 to highlight what he described as the still altogether inadequate water supply. A solution was put forward in 1885. It was proposed to build across Leeds a series of brick-lined underground water storage tanks, which were fed from the mains. And this seemed to work. The Leeds Mercury said that without the tanks, tremendous risks would be incurred from fire due to the unreliability of the mains. And Baker himself reported the tanks repeatedly gave the greatest service, particularly in districts where there are tall buildings and low water pressure. And by 1894, Leeds had 38 of these tanks in operation. Now, as the fire brigade's equipment became more efficient in extinguishing fire, so too did its complexity, which made good professional training and able leadership essential. Across the country, fire brigades shared their knowledge and ideas. And there was even international cooperation. Now, seen here in this slide, we have in 1891 a photograph which was taken at the time of the visit of members of the Paris Fire Brigade to Leeds. And Baker, he arranged an exhibition to demonstrate the speed, precision, and effectiveness with which his brigade dealt with fires. In 1894, the Leeds Brigade was invited on a return trip to Paris. And I think this slide is particularly interesting. Shows the different size of the characters. The image of the French lady there in the background is, of course, huge, and the Chief Constable, Mr. Webb, shown much bigger than Baker himself, who seems to be presented as a smaller character. Mr. Webb here is presenting a French award to Baker. And it does suggest this image that Baker was the dominant character. Sorry, that Webb was the dominant character. Although there's no doubting the professionalism of the Leeds Fire Brigade at this time, despite it being a police brigade. And Baker himself was a staunch supporter of the police model, which became apparent in 1878 when he put himself forward for the post of superintendent of the new independent fire brigade at Birmingham, only to withdraw his candidacy when he discovered that the role was not a police appointment. And I think it's probably fair to say that many in the know thought that the independent brigades were preferable. After all, the police and the fire service had very different operational roles and skill sets. So how could it be right that the specialist fire chief was subservient to the chief constable? All this really seems to have been a problem, though, at Leeds. But in 1892, Leeds suffered a huge fire on a 10-acre mixed-use site under the railway arches, which was an area stored with inflammables, and it took 24 hours to subdue. In the midst of it all, it was discovered that one of the brigade's 3 steam fire engines was out of action because it had been used to pump out the foul waters of the Leeds Goyt a few days earlier. Now, would this have happened if the brigade had been an independent brigade? It may well not have done. Leeds Mercury found no fault with the fire brigade on the day, but it criticised the fact that the brigade was considerably crippled by having one of its engines out of action. And the paper hoped that such misuse of fire engines should not be repeated. One advantage of police brigades was that they were less susceptible to manpower shortages because all the constables had experience of fire drill and training. And it was also easier for Baker to call upon police colleagues to control crowds. The fire at the Prince of Wales Concert Hall in 1868 was a good example. It was witnessed by a vast crowd of hundreds of people, including, as Leeds Times put it, light-fingered pickpockets who plied their nefarious occupation with a zeal and success worthy of a better cause. Looters were also present, outwardly seeking to help householders and traders saved their goods, only to be subsequently observed walking off with salvage. Despite Leeds Times reporting a strong police presence in addition to the firemen, it all sounds pretty chaotic, but nevertheless, the paper thought that all officers present exerted themselves manfully. Now, crowd control was a problem that didn't go away. And 20 years later, issues were reported when a crowd of between 20 and 30,000 people witnessed a large fire in central Leeds at Greek Street. Now, this fire illuminated the whole of the town centre, and according to Leeds Times, it created a spectacle of undesirable magnificence. Now, once again, the role of the police was important in keeping order after around 40 people were hospitalized when a barrier broke. Now, this slide is interesting. There are two slides here of the scene of what looks like destruction after a fire. I got these slides off the Leodis site, and the note at the bottom of the slide is that they were taken, the photographs were taken from the tower of the Cloth Hall, which would suggest it could possibly be Greek Street. And they relate to the suggestion that they relate to the 1888 fire at Buckley and Sons, which I'm talking about. But they look a bit too close up to me to actually be taken from the Cloth Hall Tower. But there we go. That's what Leodis thinks they are. Now, the fire brigade assumed a wider role than just putting out fires. And it seems remarkable that until the 1870s, neither the insurance companies nor the local authority thought as much about protecting human life as they did about protecting property. Although Leeds had acquired its first fire escape in 1856, there seems to have been the usual reluctance to invest much money in buying more life-saving equipment. When the escape was renewed in 1868, Leeds Mercury noted it was liable at the slightest hint of its services being required to fall to pieces. But a change in attitude was now afoot. And in 1877, Leeds acquired a Bailey's patent fire escape with an incombustible metal chute and ladders trussed with steel. And shown here on the right, this isn't in Leeds, but the image shows some Bailey's ladders. In 1884, Leeds invested in a street fire alarm system, which enabled members of the public to alert the brigade to emergencies. Baker reported immediate success when a man's life was saved after an alarm was raised through the new system. The brigade had rushed to a bakehouse full of dense smoke where the proprietor had almost suffocated. Fortunately, he was rescued and carried down a ladder into the street where his consciousness was restored. It wasn't until 1883 that the fire section of the Chief Constable's annual report started to record the numbers of those who died at fires attended by the brigade. And the following year, the number of those rescued from fires began to be recorded. But curiously, this practice only lasted for 3 years, lapsing until 1897, when Baker noted that very many people in jeopardy had been saved, recording 29, a figure which would have this would have included 17 who escaped from a fire at the Leeds Shorthand School through a third-story window via the fire escape and chute. he recorded 30 people rescued in 1898, and then in his final year, an extraordinary increase to 102 in 1899, which is perhaps indicative of poor record keeping in earlier years. The work of the brigade expanded further after March 1869, when it became responsible for the licensing of petroleum stores in the borough. So when Baker took charge of the brigade in 1871, he became Inspector of Petroleum stored in the borough. The license holders with the largest stores were often druggists, and a serious incident occurred here in March 1897 at the chemist Walter Huntrod's premises on Kirkstall Road, which highlight the potential dangers. Mr. Huntrod's shop is the one that was just to the left of this sun blind. Mr. Huntrod had stored 40 gallons of benzoline, 30 gallons of paraffin, and a cask of vinegar in a building behind his shop. On the fateful day, he took delivery of another 36 gallons of benzoline. He tapped the barrels and began transferring the liquid into metallic vessels, when, according to Leeds Mercury, from some unknown cause, an explosion occurred, blowing Mr. Huntrod and his assistant out of the building. A second explosion blew the roof off, causing flames to burst out 6 or 7 feet into the street, with oil escaping along the flags and gutters, so that a large part of the street was on fire. 5 firemen were burnt and another died, and the burning oil in the street caused a group of children's clothing to catch fire, which firemen and passers-by had to extinguish using their bare hands. The licensing of gunpowder stores was another area which Baker was involved in. His scrapbooks reveal an interest in the perils of gunpowder and contains clipping relating to the first gunpowder prosecutions in the West Riding under the 1875 Explosives Act, and other clippings covering a serious explosion much further afield at a cartridge factory in St. Petersburg, where 17 people died and many more were seriously injured. Now, at the fire at Hepworth's clothing factory, which was one of the largest in the world, which occurred in 1895, Baker was conscious that the factory was opposite an army barracks with its own gunpowder magazine. So he had to ensure that this was carefully emptied. This fire at Hepworth was the last time that the Liverpool, London and Globe firemen assisted Baker's brigade. A few years earlier, the insurer's agent had noted that the rivalry which still existed was legitimate and healthy. And shortly before the Hepworth's fire, in fact, their brigade was disbanded, with the company chairman publicly acknowledging the adequacy of the corporation's police fire brigade to deal alone with all outbreaks of fire in the city. And the local manager went further than this. He described the police brigade as organized to the very highest point of perfection. So the insurance company firemen actually came out of retirement to help at Hepworth's, which speaks volumes and was indicative of the respect that the brigades had for each other. The town's other fire brigade that was operated by an insurance company, the Sun Brigade, this was withdrawn in 1883 after the Sun took the view that it was no longer required. Leeds doesn't appear to have suffered from many serious occurrences involving gunpowder, and the fire committee minutes reveal responsibilities being taken diligently. Anything out of the ordinary was given special consideration, such as the affairs of the gunsmith David Slingsby, who had a particularly large stock of gunpowder and claimed to have the largest stock in Leeds of guns, rifles, pistols, and ammunition of the best quality. Slingsby became highly regarded and was consulted as an expert witness at coroner's inquests. And it didn't actually become the responsibility of the brigade to visit licensed gunpowder stores until the introduction of the Explosives Act in 1875. And it's interesting that Baker was not required to actually record the visits until September 1898, when the Chief Constable's annual reports reveal a huge number of around 600 explosive stores, principally in the outlying districts. So, to sum up, Baker and the Leeds Police Fire Brigade were overall very successful, and progressively so after the mid-1870s, acquiring more equipment, facilities, and manpower, and becoming increasingly professional, and assuming, in addition to the challenging role of firefighting, a more diverse role with greater emphasis on the protection of human life and the responsibility for ensuring the safe storage of gunpowder and petroleum. In 1890, the borough coroner had described the brigade as one of the best equipped and most efficient in the country. And during Baker's last year in service, High Court Judge Mr. Justice Bucknell, here he is, paid a surprise visit to the Leeds fire station, and he described it as perhaps one of the finest in the kingdom. The remarkable thing, though, despite the increase in call-outs to attend fires and the huge increase in the value of property at risk, the value of the property that was actually destroyed, shown here by the blue line at the bottom of the graph, actually remained constant throughout the period, from just under 54,000 in 1867 to 57,343 in 1899. After 1883, the percentage of imperiled property destroyed did not rise above 10% in any one year, falling to 4.1% in 1899, compared to almost 19% in 1870. In January 1899, reporting on the previous year, which witnessed the highest values yet for property imperiled and saved, Leeds Mercury praised the success of the brigade. It believed the crux of the matter was down to the promptness with which the brigade are able to attend fires and the methods they adopt when putting the fires out. Now, I think these figures are quite remarkable, really. You can see here the orange line is the value of property that was imperiled from the fires. And hugging very close to that, the grey line is the value saved. So the value saved really keeping up with the value of property imperiled, which gives us the low level of the property actually destroyed, seen by the blue line at the bottom. Now, Baker retired in October 1899, and in his retirement, he lived at 175 Hyde Park Road. This property on the right, which looks today like it might be a student property, It was and still is a nice spot overlooking Woodhouse Moor. And he lived here with his wife and son. The 1901 census also indicates a live-in servant and a boarder. And the family was still there in 1911, although Baker died a few months after the 1911 census was taken. But I'll leave you with some words of an interviewer who spoke with Baker shortly before he retired. He described Baker as a thoroughly practiced and experienced fireman with few equals in the kingdom. So there we are. We can